Okay, hey guys, it's Paul. So today I wanted to talk about speed duels and where I think it all went wrong. So I guess I should probably preface this by saying that I actually like speed duels for what they are, and this isn't meant to be like a hate thing. And I'm not saying that speed duels are like necessarily dead, although I do think that they probably don't have much longer of a lifespan. I'll get into that a little bit later. So I was writing down some notes as to what I like about speed duels, what I don't like, because I don't want this to just be a bashing video. Again, speed duels are cool. These are just reasons why I feel it didn't take off and succeed in the way that I'm sure Konami hoped, and maybe even how that could be addressed, at least in the future, if there is a future. We'll see. Okay, so first we'll start with the things that I think speed duels did well. And the first thing is that it's really simplified, and that's a good thing. So basically there's 3 monster card zones, 3 spell and trap card zones, 4,000 life points, and your starting hand size is a little bit smaller. The strategies themselves are a little bit simpler, and of course there's not pendulum monsters don't exist, synchros, exes, link monsters certainly. They're just fusion monsters. And deck sizes are smaller as well. Everything is sort of simplified. I actually think that for that reason, speed duels can be great for teaching new players. It's great for getting in a quick game with your friends. That can be a really good time. And also, I do like aspects of it, like the balancing. I find the balancing is extremely, it's pretty tight, right? Because it's a bunch of low power decks and low power strategies. They don't give you access to great cards. You get access to decent cards that can be used in pretty cool ways. So instead of giving you MST or Cosmic Cyclone, that's just sort of a one-trick answer to every single spell and trap you don't like, you instead get something like Twister or Dust Tornado, which have ups and downs and aren't perfect solutions or completely optimal solutions to every problem, and I think that's really cool. You also don't get just immediate monster removal. There's things like maybe Order to Charge, for instance, that is a way of getting rid of monsters, but it's tricky. And I like that. I like lower power level stuff. I like deck building decisions that have to be made. So instead of just running 3 MST, you might not want to just run 3 Twister, because Twister's not as good or as flexible as MST, and I think that's really neat. I also found the strategies were pretty cool. Usually each deck would have a fairly linear strategy. It was never something that you would accomplish in the very first turn or even the second turn. So duels are slower, there's more of a tug of war, but they were also fast, hence the speed duel moniker, and that because you had fewer life points and because your strategy is straightforward, it's easy to slip in a few games with friends. That's actually something that we did a lot. When we would play speed duels, if we ever, let's say we're gonna be going to get lunch in 20 minutes, that's more than enough time to get in a quick speed duel match. And that's fun. It's also quick to throw the decks together. And if you're trying to teach somebody how to play speed duels, it's just quick to pick up. I think that those simpler rules also help with that. It honestly, in my opinion, made speed duels sometimes feel like a Yu-Gi-Oh! On training wheels. And I don't say that in a bad way. I say that in that it could be a good way to introduce people into the game without overwhelming them. A little random side story. We, before COVID, by the way, did this cool... There's this cool Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament at a local library that we went to, and I went with Alex and Alec and Trell, and we were sort of guests there because, they saw that we had a YouTube channel and all that stuff. And so they were kids and they were learning how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And they had different decks. And for some of them, we were using speed duels as basically a way to teach them how to play. And it was cool. You have flip effect monsters and equip spells, and those are still relevant. And the average strength of a monster is not super high. Text is really simple to understand. All in all, those were great things. And the last thing, too, is just that skill cards were fun. Skill cards kind of add an extra layer of dimension to the game. You get to pick a skill. Admittedly, some speed duel skill cards can be a little bit ambiguous to understand, since they aren't cards that can be changed to, and weird stuff like that. But generally speaking, those were all some of my favorite parts about speed duels. A few other small things that not as many people know about speed duels is that it did introduce a few exclusive rarities for certain cards. So, for instance, there's a super rare copy of King of the Skull Servants, because that is a speed duel strategy that you can play. And King of the Skull Servants, up until this point, had never had a foil printing. So Speed Duels introduced its first like foil printing for a really popular kind of iconic Yu-Gi-Oh card. And there were a few other instances of this, so I thought that that's just something that's kind of nice to mention. Speed Duels got a number of products. They would get a new product release every 2 or 3 months, sort of like the real game. And there were also some structure decks. And then, of course, most recently, there was the Speed Duel Battle City box, which I think was a pretty good product. Anyway, though, all this isn't to say that Speed Duels went particularly well. So that's kind of what we're more concerned about, where Speed Duels went wrong. So first things first, it's too much like Duel Links. And while I don't personally find this to be like a cardinal sin, I think from an accessibility and interest perspective, it was definitely a weakness. Anytime I talk about Speed Duels in a positive or negative light or whatever, most people just say something like, oh, isn't that Duel Links? Or why wouldn't I just play Duel Links? And they're right. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to invest in Speed Duels, which is something I'll kind of get into in a second, but it doesn't make as much sense to invest in Speed Duels and play Speed Duels when Duel Links has very similar rules, you know, limited monster card zones, smaller deck sizes, fewer life points, and of course skills. But like it's on your phone, it's on your smartphone, you can carry it with you, you can play online, you can play for free or something. And, you know, it just kind of means like, why would I play Speed Duels? And the next issue too is that you're just revisiting old cards, but you're being sold those cards again. That's something that I know a lot of people did not like. Speed Duels doesn't it introduces new skill cards, though those are really just repeats of stuff that was in Duel Links too. But more importantly, all the cards in Speed Duels are just older Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and you're being resold them. It also isn't helped by the fact that Speed Duels, you can only use Speed Duel cards for playing Speed Duels. So like here's a great example. Sphere Karibo. In Speed Duels, Sphere Karibo is a pretty potent card, at least it was early on, you know, for being able to like stop attacks, and it's like a hand trap sort of, and it can just be a really powerful card. It's useful for a lot of decks, and it also helps a lot with a Relinquish deck, which was a really strong deck in Speed Duels. In the Speed Duel rarity, which is the one you have to use if you're using a Sphere Karibo in this format, Sphere Karibo is printed as an ultra rare card. And as we know, Sphere Karibo itself isn't printed as like a common in a number of different instances, but if you wanted to use it in Speed Duels, you had to have a Speed Duels Sphere Karibo, which is the same identical card, just with that Speed Duel moniker down there. And that card like carry like a $10, $15 price tag, as high as 20 at a small point in time. And if you need 3 of them to compete, why would you spend like anything more than pennies for a card that exists in the TCG already, and you already maybe have copies laying around in a box? It just, you see the problem? And that sort of amplifies people's issue with being resold old products again. Like, these are just Yu-Gi-Oh cards with the same effects, the same everything, just resold Speed Duel cards. So people didn't really like that. Also, another thing is, I don't think that the products really stood out very much. This might be a bit of a nitpick, but I feel like it just, Speed Duel products always got overshadowed by regular products. The set names always sound like they could be a normal set, like Fury from the Deep, I think was one. Arena of Lost Souls, I want to say was the name of like a product. And basically they just all felt like watered down main series sets. So as we've established, they just had old cards that you've already seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! Just repackaged as like a new set. And it didn't feel exciting when a Speed Duel product released. And that kind of sucks. I think they did a good job with most of the Speed Duel starter decks that they made. Those were actually pretty cool. The Rex and Weevil ones were cool. The ones at the start were pretty cool. The Merrick versus Bakura and Yugi versus Pegasus decks were pretty cool. We actually had a little mini house tournament to ourselves for a couple of hours, like with Larry and Alex and Alec and myself, and we played and it was a lot of fun. But I think that the sets were not very interesting, and then they sort of stopped releasing the sets for a really long time. It took a huge gap, and then they released Speed Duel Battle City Box, which kind of leads me to think that Speed Duel Battle City Box might just be the last Speed Duel product we get, because it had a lot of power creep, And while it was fun to play and introduce a load of new cards, I just don't know where they're going to go from here. To my knowledge, Speed Duels hasn't done well. And that leads me into my last thing, which is Speed Duels didn't really get much like local tournament support, at least not that I saw. Now I heard that there were like sort of Speed Duel days, like maybe some exclusive mat had come out or something like that, or a Speed Duel OTS pack equivalent. But I think there were only 2 of them, and my local card shop didn't get any. Local card shops in the area, I never heard of them getting any. So no one really got those like OTS type cards. Nobody got play mats. I saw that they did giant cards at some YCS events in 2019. So that was neat. But, you know, since they never really felt like there was like a Speed Duel competitive circuit, like a route to doing well in Speed Duels, it ultimately would always just be like you playing with your friends. And that's fine for casual fun, but if you ever want to get people invested, you do typically need some sort of way to reward them for like feeling like they do well in tournaments and stuff like that. And it's hard to get people at a local card shop to try out Speed Duels. It's slower, not slower, it's like less sophisticated, but because of all the other issues, people would rather just play normal Yu-Gi-Oh! Or they just play Duel Links. And so Speed Duels found itself in this weird spot. And I don't think it was marketed very well. I don't think many people even knew Speed Duels existed. Like I said, most people just said, isn't that the Duel Links thing? Or like, yeah, what is that? You find these products sitting at Walmarts and Targets all the time. Whenever we do Larry in the Hole, they're just there. No one buys them. All in all, it's kind of just a dead product. But the worst part, and the sort of final thing, is Rush Duel's existence. So Rush Duels obviously already exist in Japan. You know, the things that go with Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens and all that. They're going to be coming out in the United States at some point. We've seen like patents and trademarks and all that stuff being filed. Rush Duel, Speed Duel. Clearly those 2 things sound very similar and would just confuse people. And that's part of why I think that they're probably just going to axe Speed Duels. And that's a shame. I think that they did a good job with making it fun, but not a good enough job of making it feel accessible or rewarding. Or unique, maybe would even be a better way to put that. But still, I will say, I like Speed Duels. I played a lot of different Speed Duel decks. I remember playing the Blue Eyes deck, the Relinquish deck. I played the low-level Flip Summon Magician strategy. I played Keith's Machine strategy. We all built a lot of different Speed Duel decks, and they were a lot of fun when we were playing. And I wanted this to do well. I just think Konami kind of dropped the ball, and this is where we are. So anyways, that's the video on Speed Duels. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you feel like there's a future for Speed Duels? What would you say it did wrong? Shout outs to the community for Speed Duels. It does exist. I know that there is a niche community for it, but it just seems kind of unfortunately like it's probably on the way out. All right, I've gone on long enough. Leave your thoughts on Speed Duels in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.